it's Mika. I just wanted to quickly answer a couple questions. Firstly, this fic will have 47 parts, so 6 more after this. Also, currently my upload schedule will just be trying to finish this fic before the end of February, and then I'm hoping to upload a 1-hour-long video bi-weekly. Probably either BNHA or HP related, with my random interests thrown in there. Anyways, I hope you guys are having a good start to the year, and I will start reading. Deku, I think he's some pro. By Clouds. My head in the clouds not coming down. Chapter 76. Stupid. Ochako was more exhausted than she'd ever been, but it was a good feeling. Sure, she'd thrown up more times in the past 24 hours than she had in the past 3 years, but it would all be worth it. Already, she felt like she was able to stay weightless a little longer than she could before. So, after an entire week of this, she'd be so much stronger. Still, she collapsed gratefully on one of the benches and slowly sipped on a ginger ale as the rest of her classmates trickled in. All of them were in various stages of exhaustion. Even after just a quick glance around the room, she could see Bakugo rubbing his wrists, Kaminari staring vacantly off into space, and Momo looking noticeably thinner than she had this morning. She took another tired sip, her eyes widening slightly when Deku staggered through the door. He looked noticeably worse for wear, and both his clothes and skin were absolutely covered with drying mud and multiple blue slashes. From the way the mud was smeared across his arms, it looked like Deku had tried to wipe some of it off before dinner, but had only succeeded in rubbing it around, and so had given it up halfway through. She couldn't help giggling at the cute mental image, but made sure to get herself under control before waving him over. "Hey, Deku! Over here!" Deku froze, and slowly turned to face her, eyeing her suspiciously. "Hi." Ochako frowned. Had she done something wrong? She thought they were friends, just in general, but especially after the bus. Had she been wrong about that? She was so confused. "Deku, is something wrong?" "Why don't you tell me?" Izuku's eyes were flicking over her rapidly, taking in every detail, and despite how tired she was, Ochako probably would have blushed if it didn't look like he was searching for a weapon. "Where's the knife?" The what? Ochako just looked at him. "Deku, are you feeling okay?" "I'm way too tired for this," Deku sobbed. "Stop playing games. Either stab me or let me sleep." "Deku!" Ochako rushed to his side, only half surprised when he stumbled backwards away from her, falling onto the floor as he tripped over a box of vegetables. "What are you even talking about? Are you okay?" "Oh, Deku-kun! You made it back before me! Cool!" Ochako froze as she watched herself walk in the door with a spring in her step that the real her was currently too exhausted to muster. The doppelganger was identical to her in every way. She was even wearing the same outfit as Ochako was, although the fake's was a lot cleaner. Deku took a moment to look between the two of them, then promptly burst into tears. "Deku?" Ochako crouched down and tried to comfort him, but he just scooted away from her into the corner. "What's going on?"
"Oi, Deku!" Bakugo growled. "What the fuck are you crying about?"
They had attracted the attention of most of the class by this point, but Deku's tears were more exhausted than real distress. Like, he would usually stop crying, but was just too exhausted to care anymore.
One of them's real, and the other's gonna try and stab me. I don't know which is which.
Bakugo growled.
You're always a damn nerd, Izuku.
The entire class froze, and even Deku was shocked enough to stop crying. There was a long moment of shocked silence before the other Ochako started cackling.
That's exactly what gave me away this morning! How'd you know?
Nerd's predictable, Bakugo snorted. Oh, and that's the real one. He pointed to Ochako like she was an afterthought, and Izuku's shoulders slumped in relief. Sorry, Uraraka. I'm really tired. I figured, Ochako said, still trying to process everything as she turned to the other her. Hi?
Hi, cutie.
The other her smiled widely.
I guess I should probably change, huh?
At least put on some clothes, Izuku groaned. We're in a kitchen, for goodness sake. The other Ochako pouted, but grabbed something from a bag she'd brought with her.
You're no fun, Deku-kun.
You had that the whole time? Deku looked exasperated. The other Ochako shrugged, wrapping the robe around her shoulders.
Of course I did, Deku-kun. I'm not a heathen.
Ochako almost threw up as she watched her own face melt away into a weird goop, until the only thing left was Toga, who was wearing nothing but a bathrobe. Maybe she should talk to Aizawa. Her quirk side effects had obviously extended beyond her stomach and were now affecting her brain. Maybe Kaminari would have some advice?
Stop teasing Deku, Bakubro.
Kirishima came up and put a hand around Izuku's shoulder.
If you had to run from doppelgangers of your classmates all day, I'm sure you'd be exhausted too. So, just because Deku, for your information, shitty hair, I would tease any of these stupid extras. Not just Deku.
Bakugo grinned.
But seriously, there were two Urarakas right in front of him. It was easy to tell I was just messing with him.
Speaking of... Ochako said faintly. Why were there two of me?
Himiko's quirk allows her to transform into anyone after she drinks their blood, Flight King said, walking up behind them. Since I didn't want to leave her alone for the whole week, Aizawa suggested putting her to work to help train new kids.
Oh. Ochako looked at Deku, and suddenly the blue slashes and weird behavior made a lot more sense. Toga had probably transformed into all of them at some point during the day, so no wonder he was so paranoid. Can we just eat now? Deku had stopped crying, but he had apparently given up on standing and was just lying on the floor defeated. Shinso had apparently decided that was a great idea and was lying down next to him.
I second that notion. I'm starving. Sure, you can eat.
Aizawa walked into the room carrying a box of vegetables, flopping it down on the table with a thud.
But remember what the pussycat said last night. You're cooking it yourself.
His students were definitely better at fighting than they were cooking. The curry was, well, it was passable, but Shorter was still considering asking Lunch Rush to give some guest lectures, if only so the brats didn't accidentally give themselves food poisoning when they graduated and started living on their own. It was a hearty meal, though, which was necessary after everything he'd put them through today. The kids were actually improving enough that they might stand a chance if they had to fight the League again. Not that they'd done too shabby last time. The leadership and maturity they'd shown when they'd run into Shigaraki at the mall was beyond impressive, and the media still hadn't stopped singing the kids' praises, so hopefully a bit of intensive training would put double duty to help them get stronger and keep their heads from getting too big. The last thing they needed was overconfident problem children bragging as much as 1B thought they did. Speaking of problem children, Shorter couldn't help but notice Kota slip out of the kitchen without eating. He was most likely just trying to avoid the hero students, but still, it wasn't healthy to go without eating. Okay, maybe Shorter wasn't one to talk, but he was an adult. He could get away with a few unhealthy habits here and there. Kota couldn't. Shorter sighed when Deku caught his eye from across the room and gave him a meaningful look. Glancing towards the door Kota had just walked through. He wasn't good with kids, no matter what Joken the others said. Still, someone had to make sure the kid ate, and his students were too preoccupied to do it. Even Deku, who had noticed Kota slip out, was too busy being paranoid of his classmates, which was hilarious and excellent payback for the whole pajama stunt, to take care of one little kid. Shorter groaned and stood up, filling an extra plate with curry and silently slipping out into the woods. This property was probably excellent for a kid like Kota, who wanted to be alone. There were a lot of nooks and crannies to explore, and with the pussycats around it was mostly safe for him to tread the entire property as his backyard. Honestly, Shorter himself probably would have had a blast here as a kid, not to mention if the Three Stooges had gotten to let loose here back in high school. He shook his head to clear away the bittersweet memories. He still missed Shirokumo, no matter how long it had been. And he knew Mike did too. That was why Deku thought he'd be a good fit to talk to Kota, despite how rough around the edges Shorter was. The stories about heroes that they told to children were like fairy tales, but Shorter had learned the hard way, as had Kota, that heroism didn't always have happy endings. The kid was easy to track, unconcerned with being followed, which was probably age-appropriate, even if Shorter's first instinct was to immediately harp on the lack of situational awareness. Between his footprints and the clear path that had been cut through the forest, it was obvious that wherever the kid was, he came here often. He probably even called it his secret hideout or something. He found the kid sitting on a cliff.
"You have good taste, kid. There's a nice view here."
Kota jumped up with a yelp, surprise quickly morphing into anger when he saw Shorter.
"Stupid hero! How did you find my secret hideout?"
Shorter snorted.
"If you don't want people to find it, vary the path you take every time. Consistency is dangerous. It makes you easy to track."
Kota gave him an appraising look, but didn't say anything. Shorter rolled his eyes and set the food on the ground before sitting down at the edge of the cliff.
"The kids made curry," he said, looking out over the forest. "It's terrible, but it's better than going hungry."
"I don't want any food made by stupid heroes,"
Kota said, flinching when his stomach growled loudly. Shorter just raised an eyebrow.
"Like I said, better than going hungry."
Kota glared at him for a few seconds, but the smell of food got to him eventually, and he sat down and grumpily devoured the curry. Shorter
hid a smirk in his capture weapon. Apparently, there were limits to how much the kid hated heroes. When Kota finished, he put down the bowl and started glaring at him again.
What are you still doing here?
Shota shrugged. Like I said, it's a nice view.
No, Kota pouted. You're probably here to make me like heroes or something stupid like that. Did my aunt make you come here?
Shota gave him a look. Do you really think anyone could make me do something I don't want to do? Kota shuffled awkwardly under his gaze, and when he didn't respond, Shota continued. And I'm not gonna force you to like heroes, kid. We both know it'd be pointless anyway, so why bother? Heroism hurt you and took away your parents. You have every right to be mad about that. The poor kid looked genuinely shocked.
You don't think it's bad that I hate heroes?
Shota turned to look at the kid more closely. He seemed almost hopeful for some reason, which just made Shota angry. In a world of kids who idolized heroes, of course one who hated them would feel broken and left out. It wasn't fair, but that was life, wasn't it? I think you have a lot of sadness and anger going on in that little body of yours, and it would be illogical to think that it would all just go away, Shota said finally. Heroes are an easy target. That's fine. There's a lot of people in this world who don't like heroes. As long as you don't get carried away and let that anger make you hurt people, it's not bad that it exists. Kota winced.
Are you saying I should apologize for trying to punch that stupid broccoli kid?
Shota snorted. He'd definitely be sharing that nickname in the group chat. You can, but honestly, Deku can handle it. Just don't do it again, yeah? Kota nodded. He seemed contrite, but still probably didn't have all the tools he needed to deal with all the hatred and anger that had been coming ahead for years now. Shota couldn't really give him that, but at least he could let the kid know he wasn't alone. Shota sighed. It makes sense for you to be mad, kid. I lost someone to heroism too, and I'm still angry about it sometimes. You're really not the only one. Kota looked at him suspiciously.
You're lying. If you lost someone because they were a hero, then why are you a stupid hero too?
Because I want to keep people safe, Shota said. I don't want people to die, but that means I sometimes take the danger that was meant for them. It sucks, it's hard, and maybe there's better ways to do that, but I don't know. I do it.
That's stupid,
Kota huffed. Yep. Shota ruffled the kid's hair as he stood. But that's life. It's all just one big stupid thing after another, and we all just have to deal with it. Remember to take that plate back to the kitchen. I'm sure your aunt doesn't want her dishware scattered all over the forest. He didn't look back as he retreated silently into the woods, but he could feel Kota watching him leave. He had no idea if he'd gotten through to the kid. He probably hadn't, but he'd tried, and the kid had eaten, so that would have to be enough. Shota groaned as he realized he now had to get back to his own problem children. With his luck, they'd probably blown something up by now. Yep, life was definitely Really stupid. Chapter 80. Courage. By the time Izuku dragged himself to dinner at the end of the second day of training, he was smiling. Sure, Toga was still a challenging opponent, but he was getting better, and unlike yesterday, he'd actually gotten a positive amount of points. By his count, there was still a handful of targets left in the woods, and he wanted to find them today, but he'd run out of time before the Mandalay had called them all in for dinner. It wasn't a huge deal. He knew where they all were, and it would be easy to find them in the morning, but he wanted to prove that he could. Not only to Eraser, but to himself. It was easy to push aside his annoyance when everyone was so excited, though. And Izuku would be lying if he said he wasn't excited too. After 2 whole days in these woods, he knew all the best places for an ambush. And even if it hadn't been confirmed, he knew Toga probably wouldn't miss a chance to mess with the students, which meant that he was already a leg up as both a runner and a scarer. Even if he didn't win, however, it was sure to be a fun night. He and the rest of 1A went sympathetically as Eraserhead dragged the remedial students away. It probably would have been good training to have them join the exercise as well, but Izuku understood that there had to be some consequences, especially with all the logical ruses Eraser tended to pull. That meant that there were only 14 students left to participate though, so they'd have to work hard if they wanted to beat Class 1B. The Pussycats gave their opening explanation, and Tiger grinned savagely at them.
Class 1B will take the first turn as scarers. The winners are the ones who make the most people piss their pants.
Izuku nodded and went to stand by Kota, his assigned partner for the exercise. They watched their opponents disappear into the woods, and Izuku could see Kota getting more and more nervous. So he gave him a small smile. Hey, it's alright. There's a lot of animals around here, so you can always send them ahead to warn us of any traps. This'll be a piece of cake. Kota nodded frantically, and he started marginally shaking less, so Izuku was just gonna count that as a win. It was almost a shame that Eraser wasn't participating, considering how much he loved scaring them all on a daily basis anyway. Toga giggled and blew them all kisses as she ran off into the woods.
Good luck, cuties! See you later.
Oh, wonderful, Jiro said. We're going to have to run from ourselves, aren't we? I guess so, Yaoyorozu frowned. But, running from yourself should be easy, right? I mean, you're obviously going to know that you're the real you.
Still going to be trippy though, Bakugo pointed out. Now come on, let's get started already. The sooner we all get back, the sooner we can scare the shit out of those 1B losers.
Izuku rolled his eyes and waited with significantly more patience as the first team entered the woods. This was going to be fun. Darby looked out over the woods, smirking as he relished the peace that they were here to destroy. Behind him, the rest of the Vanguard Action Squad began putting on their masks, already anxious to go cause chaos as soon as Darby gave the go-ahead. He was the one in charge here, the one with all the power, and he loved it. So what if his old man hadn't thought he had what it took to be a leader? Here he was, proving him wrong in the best way possible. Maybe he should give Shoto another scar while he was here. May as well go for the matching set and make the kid's face symmetrical.
How much longer?
Muscular complained.
I want to see some blood.
Darby was tempted to make him wait a little longer, just to make sure he remembered who was in charge. But the sun was already down, and they were wasting time.
Catch up. Go on ahead and start the gas.
It's mustard, the brat muttered, and it's a poison, not a condiment.
Yeah. Whatever, Relish.
Darby smirked.
Just make sure those kids don't have anywhere to run.
Mustard nodded and headed into the woods, as Darby lit the nearest tree on fire and turned to the rest of the league.
Spread out and attack whoever you find. Let's show those hero brats the other side of the coin.
Izuku saw Pixie Bob sniffing the air, and did the same. He hadn't come across that scent before while he was here, and he couldn't help but be grateful. It was terrible, like a cross between rotten eggs and something burning. Pixie Bob didn't seem to like it better. "Hey, Tiger, you smell that?" she asked. "Is something burning?"
It could be a fire on the mountain, Orchidor suggested. Is it wildfire season?
No, Mandalay answered. It's not. They all whirled around when they heard Pixie Bob yelp, but there was nothing they could do as she was pulled backward and pinned under the giant weapon of someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Izuku recognized Magne from some police reports he'd been given, but he couldn't think of a single good reason why she would be here. Especially not with someone holding a giant sword standing right next to her. The guy with the sword had a lizard mutation quirk, and Izuku's brain rushed to find their weaknesses as the villain started talking.
Tonight, Stain's will be carried out. We are the Vanguard Action Squad, and I hope for your sake that you are true heroes. Everyone, we were attacked by 2 enemies, and there might be more on the way. Return to camp and regroup. Do not engage the villains.
Shorter was filled with a sense of dread as Mandalay's telepath echoed through their heads. At least 2 villains, but of course, no one would be stupid enough to attack a group of heroes and hero students with only 2 people.
Vlad, stay here,
he ordered, as he ran out the door.
I'll take care of the other students.
If this was a full-scale attack, then they were in big trouble. They had limited the number of heroes, under the assumption it would ensure the camp's secrecy, but now it seemed like they'd shot themselves in the foot. Depending on the number of enemies, they might not have any choice but to authorize the students to fight back.
It seems your concern has you distracted, Eraserhead.
Shorter barely had any time to react before a wall of flame was coming his way. He managed to dodge, barely, and growled under his breath.
He didn't have time for this. He had students to save.
As soon as the flames were gone, Shorter activated his quirk and launched a kick at the villain, who looked like he'd been stitched together by a really bad seamstress. The guy looked skinny, but he was quick and dodged Shorter's attack with only minor difficulty.
You should just give up, Eraserhead, Patchwork said. We're not after you. That means you're after the students, Shorter accused, shooting his capture weapon. I won't let you hurt them. What a hero, the villain sneered. What, do you want a medal or something? You see, this is why we're here. To knock down a few pedestals.
A gunshot echoed through the clearing, and the flame user hissed and started dissolving into grey goop.
Son of a bitch! No wonder Shigaraki wants it.
His mouth disappeared before he could finish his sentence, and Shorter forced himself to look away. Deku stood with a group of other students near the entrance to the woods, gun smoking in his hand, as he stared in horror at what used to be the villain.
That,
Deku gulped. That was some sort of copy quirk, right?
Yeah, must be. Shorter nodded. Your bullets aren't enough to kill anyone. How did you even get your gun?
I hid a few weapons throughout the woods to help me fight off Toga, Deku answered. I had Yaoyorozu make some more bullets too. I know the pussycats ordered us not to fight, but
But you picked it up just in case, Shorter said. Good work, kid. Get the rest of the students in.
Has anyone seen Kota? I already told him to come back, but I'm not sure where he goes when he's in the woods.
They both froze at Mandalay's message before Deku turned to him, face grim as he cocked his gun.
Go. I'll handle things here.
Shorter shook his head.
Vlad can help the students still trapped in the woods, and we can barricade ourselves here, Deku answered. We'll get inside and keep fighting to a minimum, I promise. Now go! You're wasting time.
Shorter wanted to argue. He really did, but the problem child had a point. Out of all the students, less than a dozen had returned to camp so far, which meant that most of them were still out in the woods, facing who knew how many villains. And Shorter wouldn't be able to help them unless he knew Kota was safe. They couldn't afford to leave the most defenseless students on their own, and if the students stayed inside, they would at least have one layer of defense.
You're authorized to use your quirks only in defense of the building, Shorter said gravely,
making sure to make eye contact with every student in his line of sight.
Do not enter the woods, and do not go after the villains. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, Sensei!
Good. Shorter huffed and started running. Deku and the others would get the message to Vlad, and if all went optimally, every student that made it back to camp would be able to bolster its defenses. He could only hope that he'd made the right decision, as he ran faster towards the place he'd seen Kota hiding the night before. Random side note, I went to karaoke last night and sang for like 2 hours straight, and I didn't think it would ruin my voice that much, but I can't do deep voices anymore. Sorry if my voice acting was a little shit this week.